Hello, welcome to the Networking and Leveraging LinkedIn webinar. This webinar is going to cover the elements of networking that you'll do as part of your B-School experience in your graduate program, as well as the best way to optimize using LinkedIn as part of your process. This is a really important topic because when you come to business school, there's an expectation about networking. And we want to help you get off on a good start and feel comfortable with this process because it will serve you well, not only personally as you go into your job search and finding out about the job that will be best for you, but it will carry on long since you're done with school. And so this is a great skill set to learn early so that you are not only getting the most out of your graduate program job search, but also that it will help you long into your professional career. So we have 4 things that we want to cover today. First, we're going to talk about networking in the B-School environment. We're going to talk about the informational interview process. I want to call out some pitfalls to avoid that we see students make at times, and certainly about putting a system in place to help you keep all of this organized. Just know that if you haven't been networking or if you're not very comfortable with networking, this is a part of the B-School culture. So while it may feel awkward to you to reach out and have the conversations that we're encouraging you to have, I want you to know that all the alumni that you are about to talk to have been in your same shoes. Everybody has had to go through that initial outreach and that uncertainty. And please know that they are there waiting for you. It's one of the benefits of our Carlson community. It is very much that they want to help you in your job search. And in a few years, when you're done with their program, you know, new students to the program will come and talk to you and you'll get to be that alumni. So the more comfortable you get with this process, the more success that you're going to have in your job search and professionally overall. So as you start to think about this, we'll give you some advice about how many appointments to have later in the webinar. But for now, just start to think about all the different people and places that you're going to get to learn about and encourage you to take full advantage of it. So as we talk about these areas, we will be sure to call out the specifics that we invite you to do. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll talk about resources and how you can continue this process going forward. I want to take a moment to talk about what we mean when we talk about networking. Many people have heard the term networking. Some people have more comfort with it than others. What I would really like to just call out is that we're really talking about the interaction with professional acquaintances and contacts that you have. There's also things about networking events, whether they're at Carlson or formally in other places that are offered to students. Most commonly, you're going to hear about an informational interview, which is really about that one-on-one conversation you have when you interview someone about their job. And whether that's the contact that has been given to you, whether that's the hiring manager or whether that's the recruiter, these are all people that you might talk to as part of your networking process. The thing that I want to just leave you with in this context is that have a real broad definition of what an informational interview or what networking is. We tend to hone in on times where it's having coffee at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock. But what I would encourage you to do is know that networking happens in a lot of places. It can happen as simply as maybe you're joining a soccer league and there's a whole new group of people that you haven't met with before, and that could be an extension of your network, an extension of your professional contacts. Maybe you have children in activities and those parents are contacts. So there's a lot of different ways that you can expand your network, and you can have informational interviews that are born of something less formal than this specific outreach at 10 and 2. That allows you a little less pressure and also gives you a greater opportunity to find all the great contacts that you have, not only professionally, but personally too. So the reason that we want you to network is that is going to be critical to your search. I mean, critical with a capital C. What you're going to do in the early stages is you're going to learn about different jobs and industries and companies. And then in the later stages, you're going to be hopefully identifying opportunities and growth and organizations that are in search mode. And so the research that you do up front in sort of the learning part, as well as the outreach later when you're doing the actual search piece, these are all going to come into play at some point through the course of your program. And so for that reason, we really want you to make this a priority. And then that includes you building a plan that helps you stay on track with this networking and then working the plan. It's a very short list. It's a very simple list, but simple and easy are not always synonymous. So what this next part of the webinar is going to do is to help you identify how you're going to approach this work, because it is going to take time. It is going to take some energy on your side and some intention on your side. But once you get it going, it will start to pay back dividends. And it does take time, because you can't just start this overnight and things happen. And so the sooner you get a start on this, the more success you'll have. A couple great resources that we like to recommend are the 2 books listed at the bottom. So Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi and The 20-Minute Networking Meeting by Perez and Ballinger are both very good books. If you want the how-to, I would go with the 20-Minute Networking Meeting. And if you want sort of a bigger perspective on the benefits of networking and some tactical stuff too, but it's a bit higher perspective, then Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi is an excellent read as well. So both of these books are great as it relates to your networking efforts, should you want to learn a little bit more about this topic. So one of the things to remember is that we also want you to network, because we have the research that says referrals are the #1 source for external hires. When you ask the recruiters, like that's the #1 place. And when we talk to job seekers, most of the time they're finding out about openings through their contacts as well. And this number can be as high as 80%, depending on on the research that you look at. The thing that I think is really important about this number has not changed in like 30 years, maybe even 40 years. It's not driven by social media, which you might think like, oh, that's because, you know, we have things like LinkedIn and Glassdoor and those types of tools. But honestly, it was always about the networking. It's always been about relationships. And you who may have been a leader in the past, maybe you've hired people, and wouldn't you often go to your network to say, hey, do you know anybody? Well, this is the same thing. It hasn't changed in all these years, because relationships and the importance of relationships hasn't changed in all these years, despite the amount of social media that we have. So it's a real compelling piece of data that we have here that we want you to also realize how important networking is for you. Lastly, and I touched on this before, but I want to go into it one more time, is you're going to take the opportunity to network for a variety of reasons. In the early stages, it's going to talk about, you're going to start learning about job function. So what does each role do? You know, really commonly in the MBA space, there's something called an associate marketing manager. Well, if you don't know anything about that role, your early conversations might be around, you know, what is the work and what are the projects like? And then as you continue down your networking, you might investigate what it is at a company level. So Schwann's and General Mills and Land O'Lakes all have associate marketing manager roles, but they all look different. No 2 roles are the same, even if they have the same title. And part of your networking is sort of figuring out the nuances of the differences of those different roles in those different companies. And then certainly the ability to translate how your background is going to best fit into the company or the industry that you want to go into. And then as I brought up, you know, long-term, this is going to serve you. You guys are going to be a network in and of yourselves, not only with your immediate classmates in your program, but across programs, and ultimately the alumni overall, not only at the graduate level, but the undergraduate level. So long-term, you can always come back to the Carlson network. And this has been going on for so many years. This expectation and this culture is always going to be there for you. So there's all these reasons that you would want to do the networking. Additionally, once you get that foundation of knowledge, once you have understanding about the job function or the company or the industry, that allows you to take that foundation of knowledge, build on it so that your application is stronger, your cover letter is stronger. Ultimately, your interviews are better. And you're developing advocates on the inside of these organizations to help promote you and guide you and maybe even encourage you along the way through the course of your process. As it relates to expectations, we've got some pretty specific expectations that we want to take this time to call out. So your expectation is that you're doing this specifically to gain information. You want to learn, you want to research, you want to understand the differences. And that doesn't matter if you're going for a data scientist role or if you're going for a financial role or a consulting role, it's all about gaining information. so you can learn and resource your chosen career path. Whatever you think you want to do along the way, you're not going to get every networking appointment to have the same information. And that's a good thing because you're building out this breadth of knowledge about the industry and the type of work that you want to do. This is also going to help you and encourage you to practice talking about yourself and telling your story, ultimately building on that muscle and that skill set for future interviews. And then, as I mentioned before, building advocates or allies along the way for later. On the GBCC side, our expectations are that you actually do it. So there is a lot of information that the coaches in the office can tell you around the students who are most successful in their job search are the students who get comfortable with networking as quickly as possible. So avoiding this process is not going to serve you well in the long term. It is easier on your job search if you get comfortable with this process. So it very much matters that you do it and you get into it as quickly as possible. We want you to learn as much as you can. And then we want you to make sure you're leaving people with a positive impression, certainly of you, but also your class and Carlson, so that they see that people from all of our programs are doing their best to interact with alumni and organizations and presenting not only well on behalf of themselves, but for the Carlson brand overall. Now there's lots of types of networking. There's large groups, there's the informational interview that we talked about. You certainly can do some networking from your desk. All of these things are different types of networking. For the purposes of our call today, we're going to focus on the informational interview because that is where the nuts and bolts of the networking that you're going to do as part of your program are probably most likely going to present itself to you. So let's shift gears a bit and let's go into what that informational interview process looks like. We've broken this process up as simply as possible into 4 main segments, and I'm going to break down all 4 of these segments. But at the basics of it, you're going to identify people, you're going to introduce yourself, you're going to manage the event, and then you're going to have timely follow-up. Like in a nutshell, this is how you will run all of your informational interview processes. So let's break that down and show you what I mean by each of those categories. Now, when it comes to identifying people, there are, of course, lots of ways to do that. The people that you know, your previous contacts, everybody that you have in LinkedIn, but also now that you are part of the Carlson community, we want you to use what's called the LinkedIn alumni page. And I'm going to go into that again in just a moment. We also want you to leverage TalentLink under organizational research. And there are a number of other places you could go. You could be the Carlson School of Management alumni group and join that group on LinkedIn. You could also be using your undergrad school. Some of the undergrad programs have really strong alumni collections. You should leverage that. You could be a member of the military and use the military connections that you have. So professional organizations too. All of these are possible connections points for you, whether it's LinkedIn or some other organization that you have a strong affiliation to. As we go through this next few slides, we're going to really focus on the alumni page, the public page specifically, and TalentLink, because that is, in truth, where you will start and get the most of your contacts off the bat. Leveraging all those other groups are equally important, but in terms of like what you will all do consistently and across all programs is going to be these 2 spots. Your goal as you're identifying people is that you're going to find allies, whether they're existing or potential mentors, people that are responsive, people who follow through. You are going to run into curmudgeons. You're going to run into people that aren't responsive. Don't let that throw you off. So we want you to realize that sometimes people aren't on LinkedIn as much as you are. Sometimes people are just busy, or there are projects, or they're just not, as tapped into their networking after they've left the program. That certainly is going to happen. We have so many alumni though, we don't want you to let that hold you back. So it's just around, you'll reach out to people, and if you don't hear from them after a couple of tries, then you'll move on. So most importantly about finding contacts and identifying people, the LinkedIn Carlson public page is certainly the one that is best place to start. So this public page has, 30,000, probably 40,000 alums at this point, which helps you get all of Carlson alums from all programs. So that means undergrad and grad across every program that Carlson offers a degree to. That's what's in there. This is where you want to start, truly. This is where you would begin your search. And this is the URL in order to get there. Another way to do it is you simply can just go out to LinkedIn and look up Carlson School of Management, and you can get to it that way too. But this is the URL if you'd like to use it. The other thing that we've talked about briefly, and I'm only going to touch on it, and is a point of comparison more than anything, is there's also what's called the Carlson LinkedIn group. This is a private group that's not seen without joining it through the alumni office. And there's about 14,000 people there. You have to request access to get into it, which is not the same as the page. The page is public, and as long as you can get to that page, you can get to it. The benefit of being in the group though, and this is what we get a lot of questions on, is you don't need LinkedIn Premium. Most of the coaches can show you a workaround for most of what LinkedIn Premium offers, and we don't want you to have to spend money you don't need to. And so we leverage the group when we want to be able to message people without having the premium subscription. So that's the reason why you might want to be in the Carlson LinkedIn group or any other professional group for that matter, because it would be any group you're a part of. You can always message the members without being part of premium. It's important though to understand the difference of these two things so that you are looking in the right place to find the people that you need to. So as long as you look on the left and start with the page, you'll be okay. This is a snapshot of what the Carlson alumni page looks like. And again, this is where we want you to hang out. So as you can see, there are about 41,000 alumni. And as you look at the page itself, once you get out here, you can see that you can sort by where they live, where they work. And as you hit next, there's a few other categories in terms of what they do and what they studied. So this is a way to help sort through the alumni and get it to a manageable list. I really encourage you to hit pause at this moment, go over to LinkedIn and spend 5 or 7 minutes putzing around on this page. This is a great way where you could get from 41,000 to 50 or 60 people relatively quickly by where they live, where they work, types of work that they do. And that gives you a manageable list of people that then you can reach out to. So once you've gone over there and played around with it for a few minutes, come back and restart the webinar and we'll continue to the next page. The next thing that you're going to do to find contacts is you're going to use TalentLink. TalentLink is the software used by the GBCC. This is where all things career exists. And there's a great tab within TalentLink that is called Organization Research. This has all of the organizations on it, as simple stuff as their street address and where they're located, but really rich information in terms of actual contacts, notes from our business development team, who is the employer relations facing team on the GBCC group, as well as recruiting history. There is so much rich information about organizations that the deeper you go into TalentLink, into your job search and leverage TalentLink, you'll be able to leverage this quite a bit more. For our purposes right now, where I would hone in on though is contacts. So anybody that is interacted with the GBCC office would be listed here, as well as their direct email address and the role that they're doing. The one tip that I have is before you contact anybody, this particular list is static, meaning once the name goes in, it lives there in its entirety for the duration of how long we have TalentLink. So a best practice is to take the contact name, go over to LinkedIn and just make sure that they're still doing that role, because it's not going to change. It's not linked anywhere. So as long as you just want to make sure that they're still with that company and they're still doing that role before you reach out to them. But after you go, what I'd encourage you to do now is hit pause and go over to TalentLink and go over to organizational research and spend a couple minutes clicking around there as well. Okay, so these are the two main ways that you're going to find contacts. Don't forget, you also have friends and families and coworkers. So as you go into this process, absolutely, without a doubt, begin leveraging the Carlson connection, begin leveraging Carlson alumni, begin leveraging other students in other programs. All of that is part of finding contacts. But also don't forget, you've already come from a rich experience. You probably already come from a professional environment. So don't forget to leverage any of your personal contacts above and beyond what you find on LinkedIn, because the people that know you best are the people that will help you network the easiest. Once you've found people to talk to, or multiple people to network with, the next thing you need to do is reach out and introduce yourself. And so we want to give you some guidance around the best practices for making that a clean outreach. So the easiest way that we think about it is with a 5-point email. This is a personalized email, like very much personalized email, less than 100 words that are written in your own voice and style. Now, what you're trying to do when we say 100 words is you want to avoid people needing to scroll. Keep in mind, people are busy, so you want to make it easy for them to read it and respond to it without having to scroll through everything. And a lot of us are also looking at our email on our phone. So if you have a really long email and then you're reading it on your phone, it's just a lot to ask of your reader. So you want to get to the point, about 100 words, more or less, and in a style and voice that feels authentic to you. So you'll have a connection that goes first, meaning, you know, identify that you're a Carlson student, or identify that you're undergrad or military or whatever your connection is. Identify your general interests and maintain control of the follow-up. And what the question around maintain control of the follow-up is, let them know when you'll reach out next. It's a timeline thing. And I'll show you an example of that in just a moment. We're not going to mention jobs anywhere. This is a very important part of this process. From an etiquette standpoint, we don't start with, is there a job that's available, whether that's the subject or the body. So let's take a moment and look at a couple examples really quick. Here's one. I'll give you a moment to just read it, but as you can see, good morning, Ms. Garcia, or depending on if they're like a recent grad, you might use a first name. Just be mindful of what level of respect you need to identify when you're doing your opening. But you're gonna say, I'm a Carlson MBA or Carlson HRIR, whatever your program is, student who found your information via the Carlson School Alumni LinkedIn group, trying to find out, learn more about marketing careers in food companies, looking at your history. I think your insights would be really helpful. Could I have 20 minutes of your time to ask you about your experience with craft? And then this is the maintain control of the follow-up. I recognize this might be a busy time for you if you're unable to connect by email. I'll try and reach you next week to see if that's more convenient. It's important because now you know when you should reach out again, right? Now you know when you're going to send a follow-up email to Ms. Garcia if you needed to. And then thank you for your time. And as you can see here, I've included the email footer that we recommend you use as part of your overall process. So this is an example. Very critically here is that you want to get comfortable with writing your own note. So I want you to use this as a guide, but you can't copy this as your note. Because if you think about it, if everybody in your program used this identical note and sent it out to all of the network in the Carlson community, it would not look authentic. They will realize that you're just copying and pasting and that you didn't write it. And so you won't be seen as authentic. So use this as a guide to get you started. And it can have similarities, but again, what you're trying to do is make it personal to that individual. So let's look at one more here. Another example, dear Mrs. Garcia, or Ms. Garcia, Carlson student found your information via the Carlson alumni page on LinkedIn. Spent the last several years in marketing at General Mills, and now I'm seeking to return to Illinois to be closer to family. Would you have 20 minutes to talk about craft? Recognize you're busy. So like this is a slightly different angle for this particular student. You know, like I might be relocating to Illinois. So this is where you're showing the general interest before you are really going to give them the sense of what you're wanting to talk about before you like surprise them at the one-on-one itself. Okay, and once again, this is just an example. Please use your own style as part of the process. So once you've introduced yourself, now somebody has said yes, right? Or multiple people have said yes. So now how do you make it a meaningful experience? So let's talk about how you manage the event. Well, the first impression is important because this is the first time they're going to see your face, right? Whether it's in person or over the video. This is about like, how do you give them that end-to-end experience of you? And so networking and dating have a lot in common, okay? A lot in common. And a one-on-one is a lot like a first date. And so you would never go to a first date and ask somebody to marry you. You would probably never go on a first date and make an assumption about how deep the relationship is, right? It would feel uncomfortable. And so in this particular context, These one-on-ones, you're gonna have a lot of first dates. You're gonna have a lot of one-on-ones, and some of them are gonna be really exciting and give you lots of energy, and some of them are gonna be a little bit more work, and they're gonna be a little bit more complex. And so the trick here is to realize your goal isn't to get married, or in this case, your goal is not to get a job as a result of this one-on-one. Your goal is to essentially get a second date, or rather, your goal is that you want to be able to have an additional conversation with them at the right time down the road, right? So you want to be able to continue building on the relationship with this individual. So two sides of this managing the event. First, there's the logistics. So you're gonna identify the dates and the times to meet. If you are going to meet physically using an office, a location near their office, or you offer to go to their office, currently what we're seeing is a lot of things happening on Zoom or Google Hangouts, but Zoom tends to be the preferred platform because it's accessible for pretty much every organization. So if it was Zoom, then rather than meeting at the office or meeting at a particular coffee shop, you're going to send the meeting notice and include the logistics. So whether that's the address for a physical location or the Zoom link. You will also dress appropriately. Most of the time we're talking about business casual. Even if it's a video chat, you don't want to be too casual because you want to show that you've shown up or that you have thought through the impression that you want to make. Keep mindful of your time. If you've asked for 20 minutes, then you want to be really thoughtful about maximize or using that 20 minutes and not extending past your welcome. And then at the end of it all, you know, asking for permission if you could reach out to them again, if in fact that's what you want. So if it's going really well and you want to have another conversation in a couple months when it's closer to interview time, then you can make sure that you ask if it's okay if you reach out again. So that's how you manage the logistics piece of it. Once you're there, the things that you talk about are the things that you've researched and you really want to get deeper in. So I encourage you to think about what are the topics you really want to know about? What are the things that matter to you? Don't worry about the right question. Don't worry about being clever per se, but what do you really want to know? And my asterisk to that is make sure it's something you want to know, but not something you can look up online. So you want to make this as seamless as possible for the person that you're meeting, like they are seeing the thoughtfulness that you put behind the questions. You want to make sure that you're not asking them a question that you could have looked up on the internet. Because at that moment, you sort of like flag yourself and say, well, why are they asking me this question? They could have just looked that up. So you have this human in front of you, leverage it to the hilt for stuff that only a human on the inside of the company could answer. And that can include a lot of things. That can include questions around what will help you determine if it's a good fit for you. Like what is important to you that makes you know that company A versus company B is the right place, or industry A versus industry B is the right industry for you. You're looking for information that will help you write a better cover letter or do a better interview. And it's not an overt question. It's not you saying, how can I write a better cover letter for you guys? It's more of the information and the topics that you talk about, how does that inform you to write a better cover letter for that application or that interview? Certainly ask about any strategic challenges that they're having. You know, maybe there's something you could actually add value to. Maybe there's something that you could help with. You never know in these cases. It's also really beneficial to know their pain points. So when we think about strategic challenges, like what keeps you up at night, or what are the things that are most challenging for your team right now, inform you as where you could, as an employee, perhaps add more value. How do you show them that if you're having that pain point of, we can't get this X thing figured out on the supply chain, maybe that helps you write a better cover letter. Maybe that helps you set up how you tell about yourself and how you have a really great big depth in supply chain. Those types of scenarios. So that's why you want to know about their pain points and their challenges, because you might be the very special person that can fix that for them. Be ready to share your personal brand statement or your elevator pitch, or express yourself, tell them about you. And then do ask if there are other people that you should talk to. Could they refer you to another department? Is there someone else on the team that would have different insight or better insight? These are the things that you think about. That seems like a long list, I bet. Like when I go through all those things, that in and of itself could be a very long conversation, but you only have a finite amount of time. So it's about prioritizing these categories to the best of your ability and thinking about what it is you really want to walk away with and managing your time appropriately. Now, as I mentioned before, the 20-minute networking meeting is a great book that we leverage a lot at the GBCC. So if you're looking for a very tactical instruction, a minute-by-minute instruction of how to play out this time, I'm going to refer you to getting your hands on this book. This particular slide is just a snapshot, like in a nutshell, what they're recommending that you do with your time. But if you're wanting greater depth, greater instruction, it's really wise to grab it. And you can get a copy of this on Amazon for very inexpensive to have as your own and leverage on a regular basis. In addition to thinking about these questions that you're going to answer and managing the logistics and managing the time, essentially what you're trying to do is give them this great experience of you. And types of characteristics you want to demonstrate is that you're a strong communicator with good level of confidence, that you're thinking strategically, that you're positive, that you're organized, that you're grateful for their time, and you're grateful for the opportunity that they're going to give you their insights to their organization, and the follow through that you have. So once you show them how good you are and how on top of everything you are, that also, even though you may not be speaking, that also shows them the end-to-end wrapper of who you are as an individual. So after you've had the event, now it's time to do your follow-up. And so we have a few quick rules about follow-up that we want to encourage you to do. First is that you're going to do a personalized thank you email. So just like you personalized your invite to connect, you're going to personalize your email. This should happen in under 24 hours. Do not let this rest. And in fact, if you can, I would probably do it the same day before the sun goes down, because you want to show them that Carlson students are on top of this and take this very seriously and recognize the importance of their time and energy that they took to spend time with you. You're going to complete any offers that you made. So I will follow up with so-and-so, I will reach out to this and that. You're going to send them an article if you brought up an article that you thought that they'd like. Whatever those offers were, that you do them in a very time-sensitive way. And then finally, provide an update. So if they gave you a referral to talk to Mike, I would expect that you would have your conversation with Mike and then swing back around to that original referral and say, hey, just want to let you know I spoke with Mike. It was really informative. He helped me so much on this particular question. Thank you once again for the connection. Hope you're having a great day. And that's keeping them in the loop around that you've followed through on whatever it is that they use their personal capital for in order to help you in your search. So all of this is really part of your timely follow-up, although it might happen over the course of a week or two in its totality, depending on what the follow-up is. We get a lot of questions around staying in touch and what the follow-up looks like, because sometimes the initial networking interaction is early in your program, and there's a long lag time before the contact that you had may be useful. And there's also, it's important to recognize that not every contact has the same depth of response following that initial one-on-one meeting. So once you have that initial conversation, there are some ideas here, not the exhaustive list, but some common things that people might do. So you have your initial thank you, but then maybe you follow up with them and you had some, they gave you some advice that you took them up on. Or maybe there's something like a natural update that happened in terms of, hey, I finished this course, thank you for recommending it, that type of thing. You might leverage them for mentorship, and I use that word loosely, more of a like, are you a resource? So if you have a particular class come up, you might reach out to them and say, hey, I know this is a specialty area of you, I'm about to do a project, could I just spend 10 minutes with you and ask you about it before I start down my project path? There might be a resource that you share with them. So whether that's an article or something that made you think of them, you might be just sharing it and say, hey, I saw this and I thought of you and I just thought you'd enjoy it, and you send it. And it doesn't always have to be work related. You know, sometimes it could just be personal stuff that comes up in the conversation, because that's okay too. And in fact, sometimes better. If your relationship is only focused on business, sometimes people have a harder time having follow-up. So if you know that they're an animal lover, or if you know that they have kids in soccer, you know, that's okay to incorporate that as part of your follow-up, or as part of your insight, because that just helps you build that relationship at not only a professional level, but a personal level. And sometimes it's just time to say hello. If enough time has passed, it is nothing more than, hey, it's been 6 months since we last chatted. I just wanted to say hello. I was thinking about you, would love to catch up again and see how you're doing. So all of these are possible ways of staying in touch. Again, it's not an exhaustive list. You can also congratulate them if they get a promotion or hit like a major milestone on LinkedIn, like 10 years at their company. All of those things are also great reasons to sort of tap into your network. But these are just common ways to keep it warm when there isn't actually a reason to reach out. So that's our process overall. That's the end-to-end, how we want you to approach the informational interview process. And as you do this, what I'm going to recommend is before you start your program, have 4 or 5 of these conversations with people in your network. Don't necessarily worry about the Carlson network, though you certainly can, but maybe have conversations with people who are closer to you or who are professional colleagues of yours already, and start to practice this process a few times before you get on campus. You may get to 4 or 5 people and decide that you're really comfortable with it, and this is feeling good and you're feeling ready for an extended or more networking. You might find that you need 6 or 7 conversations to start feeling comfortable, because networking in and of itself might not be the thing that feels best to you. It's okay, but we want you to do it before you get started, because this is going to be such an important part of your process that we want you to kind of do a baseline check about where you're feeling best at and where you might want to work on it before you really start tapping out into companies and contacts that really could have an influence on your job search overall. We want to take just a couple minutes to talk about some of the pitfalls we see. So of course, over the years, we have seen a lot of people be great networkers, and we also see some common mistakes that come up again. So I'm going to put this list up for you to look at while we talk about common mistakes. And I am going to highlight the first one, probably more than the rest, because I know that while these might seem common or like very, very overt, they happen every year. They happen all the time. But the one on top is the one I want to make, I think, kind of stand out the most, which is don't do your first informational interview or your first one-on-one with your dream employer. There's no doubt about this process in this context being new to everybody. And so there are absolutely mistakes that are going to be made. You're going to figure out things that are not quite fluid for you just yet. I would rather you make those mistakes and learn about those bumps when it's not your dream employer. It's great initiative, and I can always appreciate when somebody's got the energy and the passion to say, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to talk to my dream employer. But that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. And that's a lot of risk that you might face in order to talk to that dream employer before you're ready. So please, please, please practice 4 or 5 at minimum before you even think about dancing around or having a conversation with somebody at your dream employer. And quite frankly, probably more than 4 or 5 to really warm up. Okay, the other things that I want to call out specifically about what not to do is we really are strongly going to give you some etiquette here, which is you're not going to ask if they know of a job for you. That's not why you reach out to your contacts. Again, it's about learning. It's about understanding the organization. It's about investigating particular industries. It's in a state of inquiry, not in a state of ask, if that makes sense. Which means then you're not going to hand them your resume without being asked. Certainly if they ask you for it, by all means, provide it, have it ready, but you're not going to just, hand it over. Be mindful that you're not asking for more time than you requested. And you can actually ask, you can say, I see we're almost out of time. I'll be brief. Or you can say, I see we're almost out of time. I want to be respectful. Would you have an additional 5 minutes? But make sure that you're being very conscious of what they've offered, what they've agreed to, and not to overstay your welcome. Don't recite facts from the company. Again, this is about that you're going to show you've researched yourself, but I don't want you to just make yourself a fact machine that you have looked everything, or that you've just looked stuff up online. If you are an international student, this is not a good time to talk about work authorization or visa sponsorship. And I don't want you to monopolize or interrupt the conversation. we're going to apply the 80-20 rule in this case, which is they're actually going to be talking 80% of the time. You're in a listening mode, you're in an information gathering mode. So you should be conscious that you are not monopolizing the conversation, because the original outreach was that they were going to help you learn and they were going to inform you, not that you could tell them all about you. This also might make those of you that don't like to be the center of attention, or that maybe aren't quite comfortable with this process, think that they have a lot of talking to do or a lot of awkwardness. But if you come equipped with your 5 or 6 questions, and I usually have more questions than I have time for just as a backup, they will be doing the bulk of the conversation. They will be holding the room most of the time. And so be mindful of that as well. Okay, the last thing to think about is putting a system in place. So at the beginning of this webinar, I talked about how critical it was to your search, how you had to make a priority, and how you had to build a plan. So now we're going to talk about what that plan might look like and how you can keep track of it. I'm going to show you this visual as an example, and you can adapt it to the networking needs that you particularly have. The goal of this is that you're starting your networking well before your recruiting season. And once you start this process that I'm about to go through, you're always thinking about it in 2 weeks out. And I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. So let's just say it's Monday, and I am going to send out 10 emails to Carlson alum and in my personal network to ask if I have time. And this is me doing outreach. And I hear from 5 of them. So I got about 50% response rate. I actually think it'll be a little bit higher, but this makes the numbers easy. And from those 5 responses, you're able to set 3 appointments. Now this is where it's important. Just because you have 3 appointments set, do not assume you're going to have 3 meetings, because something's going to happen. They're going to have a crisis. They're going to have a kid that's sick. You're going to have something that comes up at school. Those 3 appointments are not probably going to all hold. So your best hope is that maybe 2 out of the 3 stick in any given week. So for me to have 3 appointments on the books 2 weeks out, I would be working through this funnel, for lack of a better word, to try and have those all set up. So 10 emails that I'm sending out asking for appointments 2 weeks from now. 5 people say yes. I set them up. I get to that week, and then hopefully those, 2 out of those 3 appointments stick. And if I'm always working 2 weeks out, that makes me getting my activity going so that I'm always on top of my networking, and I am always in control. So that way I go into each week knowing, hey, I've got 3 appointments on the books. I'm ready to go. I don't have to think about who I'm going to talk to. I'm worried about 2 weeks from now. So that's why I talk about setting up 3 appointments and with the hope of 2 sticking. As you think about your personal search, this number 3 that I'm putting out there is just for illustration purposes. It's probably a good starting point. But if you have a lot of urgency around your job search and you're looking to get your momentum and your networking going faster, well, then that means more. So then maybe you're doing 12 emails and you're hoping for 6 responses and hopefully getting 4 appointments for that 3 meetings that week. So you're going to modify the numbers that you use, and you can track this. Like on every week, I would really encourage you to track how many emails did you send out? How many responses did you get? Like maybe if you find out you're not getting a lot of responses, do we need to look at what your email says? If you're not getting a lot of appointments, is it that you're not on a timeline that works? So there's tracking that can happen that will help you kind of identify how your process is going. Now, your tracking can be done in a variety of ways. So there's certainly your calendar, which I think has a lot of ease to it. There's a book called The 2-Hour Job Search, and chapter 6 and beyond are really great at how you would do that in your calendar. People have used Google Sheets in the past. People have used Excel. People have used Trello, all sorts of ways for you to track this. Whatever works best for you is what you really want to worry about. So you're going to look at who you spoke to, their contact info, basic contact info type of information, the main points of the chat, and any follow-up you need to do, and a note when you should reach out again, which could include the ideas of why you would reach out at that point. So reach out again in 90 days for X. If you're using your calendar, you can also front load it. So you can make a little trigger in your calendar so that 3 months from now, you're going to go back and talk to Maria because there was a particular thing that made sense to follow up. So do whatever process you think will be most effective for you in the system that will help you stay on top of it. So don't over orchestrate it. Don't make it so complicated it becomes burdensome. Just make it so that don't get wound up in the tracking. Do the networking, if that makes sense. As you continue this process, you're going to find that the networking takes up a lot of time, and that's how it should be. In general, we would rather you network because we know that is the better way to find the job than we want you to spend time doing online applications. We know that the more comfortable you get with this process, the better it will serve you across the board and long term. And so the sooner you get to this place, the better off you'll be. Keeping in mind that B-School culture, keeping in mind that the alum and the people from the other programs are more than happy to talk to you about anything. And then you'll get to pay it back. In a few years, you'll be sitting on the other side of this fence and serving and talking to students long after you've left the building. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've got networking in B-School. We've talked about the informational interview process, the pitfalls to watch out for, and putting a system in place. Again, we really encourage you to start with 4 or 5 appointments just to get your feet wet, and then grow that to whatever number you need to if you're still not comfortable. Additionally, we don't want you to flounder. We absolutely are here to help. So we want you to stay connected with your coach to work through any hiccups that you're having. You know, after you've had those 4 or 5 appointments and you're just feeling like it's not clicking, you are more than welcome to reach out to the GBCC. We are here to help you. We definitely want you to be successful in this process. And there is no coach that wouldn't be more than happy to guide you through this process and give you the support that you need. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate your full attention during this topic of networking and using LinkedIn. As you go forward, we wish you lots of luck, and don't forget to reach us, and we're here to help. So good luck, and we'll see you soon.